Awakening in the desert. As Shayla's eyes fluttered open, she was greeted by the musty scent of age and the faint tang of steel. Her senses stirred, and she detected the subtle aroma of aggression, untainted by malice. A sly smile crept onto her lips as she stretched her ethereal form, her long raven-black hair rippling like the dunes she ruled. "How long has it been since I've had the pleasure of hosting a mortal in my domain?" she mused aloud, her voice like the gentle rustling of sand. "A few centuries, a millennia." With a languid movement, Shayla rose from her slumber, her ornate jewelry glinting in the dim light. As the cloaked soldier approached, she unfolded her arms, towering over him like a colossus. Her golden eyes, as bright as the desert sun, shone with an inner radiance that illuminated the chamber. "Welcome, mortal, to my humble abode. Consider yourself blessed to stand before me, Shayla, the immortal queen of the dunes." Meanwhile, the soldier stumbled through the temple's labyrinthine halls, disoriented and confused. The teleportation seal on his chest had faded, leaving behind a faint tingling sensation. His equipment, once reliable, now lay dormant, refusing to respond to his commands. Cursing the elves and their mystical meddling, he trudged forward, searching for an exit. As he entered the grand chamber, his gaze swept across the room, taking in the treasures scattered about. Suddenly, a voice like thunder boomed through the silence, making him spin around. The massive woman before him was a sight to behold. Her sable hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of night, and her skin glowed with a warm, golden light. Her eyes, shining like the sun, seemed to fill the room with their radiance. The soldier's initial shock wore off quickly, replaced by a skeptical gaze. He eyed Shayla up and down, his expression unreadable. "You don't have a shadow," he observed, his tone detached. With a casual flick of his wrist, he sent a small stone flying toward her. The rock passed through her form, and he nodded, unsurprised. "Just as I thought, more magic or illusions or whatever. Props for the entrance, though, real showstopper." Shayla's face darkened, her eyes flashing with indignation. Her massive fist clenched, threatening to crush the mortal beneath her wrath. But as she gazed into his deadpan stare, she realized that intimidation would not work on this one. Her expression softened, and she adopted a more measured tone. "Human, you fail to comprehend the magnitude of your fortune. You stand before the great Shayla, immortal queen of the dunes. I have forged cowards into warriors, elevated beggars to kings, and mended shattered hearts. All you need to do is express your heart's desire, and I shall make it a reality." As she spoke, Shayla's form shifted, her size diminishing to match the soldier's. She floated around the room, her movements as effortless as a cloud drifting across the desert sky. Her golden eyes locked onto the mortal, filled with an expectant intensity, awaiting his response. The soldier's skepticism. As Shayla whispered her seductive words, her form solidified, and she began to circle the soldier, her movements as sinuous as a desert snake. Her fingers trailed across his mechanical arm, sending shivers down his spine. "Or perhaps you'd like your arm back, or a treasure trove of gold rivaling the sands of the desert. Just whisper your heart's desire, and I shall make it a reality." The soldier, however, remained unmoved, his gaze roving the chamber as if searching for an escape route. "Wish, huh?" he muttered, his tone laced with skepticism. "Why are you even here, Jenny?" Shayla's expression turned tragic, her eyes welling up with tears as she floated over to an ancient vase. She wrapped her arms around it, her body language a picture of despair. "Oh, my tale is one of woe. A powerful archmage whom I helped rise to greatness imprisoned me here, condemning me to centuries of solitude." She batted her eyelashes, her voice trembling with sorrow. "Now I wait, longing for a selfless soul to set me free." The soldier snorted, amusement playing on his face. "You're a genie, huh? I always thought you guys would have beards and be blue," he chuckled, shaking his head. "You grant wishes but twist them to teach a lesson, right?" Shayla's face fell, her eyes widening, and the soldier's gaze remained unyielding, his eyes glinting with amusement. "You're not very good at this, Ginny," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "First human in several centuries, and it's a homicidal one with no will to live." He spat on the ground beside him, his expression a mask of disgust. Shayla's face contorted in anger, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Bark, bark, bark, Ginny," the soldier mocked, his voice rising in a cruel imitation of her earlier words. The Ginny's anger boiled over, her words spilling out in a bitter torrent. "You think you're clever, don't you? You think you can outsmart me, a being of ancient power. I'll have you know, human, that I've been granting wishes for millennia. I know every trick, every tactic, every deceitful ploy." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper, "and I'll get what I want, one way or another." The wish. The soldier's grin grew wider, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Man, I wish," he began, his voice trailing off as he raised his index finger, pointing it at Shayla. The Ginny's face lit up with triumph, only to falter as she realized the soldier's intentions. "Here's a rephrased and expanded version of the scene," the soldier said. "I want you to be such that the vase can no longer hold or bind you." Shayla roared with laughter, the sound from the desert pouring into the temple like a vortex. The vase shook and trembled, cracks appearing all over its surface as the Ginny swirled and laughed, relishing in the thought of her soon-to-come freedom. "You fool," she roared, her golden eyes shining through the vortex of sand and dust. "You think this will grant you some favor with me? That I'll owe you one." Her voice was laced with amusement, her words dripping with sarcasm. "Nonsense. You will be the first one I turn into a corpse for your insolence towards me. This temple will serve as your tomb." The restraints on her wrists fell to the ground with a clang before turning into sand and being sucked back onto the rattling vase. The vortex soon began to pull Shayla back into the vase. What's going on? This shouldn't be happening." "Your wish, my freedom," she screamed before finally being pulled into the vase, her freedom tantalizingly close yet still out of reach. The vase shattered violently, sending shards of ceramic and sand flying in every direction. The soldier instinctively covered his face with his metal left arm, protecting himself from the debris. As the dust settled, he waved his other arm to clear the view in front of him, coughing slightly. "I'm free," the Ginny said, her voice barely above a whisper. She sat where the vase once was, her body now tangible and solid, her eyes locked onto the soldier. Her gaze burned with a mix of emotions: liberation, shock, anger, and embarrassment. Shayla's body seemed to glow with a newfound radiance, her ornamental jewelry sparkling in the dim light of the temple. But despite her regal appearance, she looked vulnerable, her arms crossed over her chest, as if to shield herself from the world. "Don't just stand there," she hissed, her voice laced with venom. "Get me a curtain or something to cover myself." The soldier quickly obliged, grabbing a piece of cloth from the pile of riches that littered the chamber. He tossed it over Shayla, who quickly wrapped it around herself, her movements awkward and uncertain. As she sat there, trying to process her emotions, Shayla realized that she was no longer intangible. Her body was solid, her skin sensitive to the touch. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, and she jumped when the soldier patted her on the shoulder. "He touched me," she thought, her mind reeling with the implications. "He touched me." Adjusting to mortality, Shayla's magic surged through her, feeling alien and unfamiliar. She extended her right hand, focusing her power. The sensation of it coursing through her was like a shockwave, making her skin shudder. "Wither to dust and begone from my sight," she shouted, unleashing a torrent of sand that hit the soldier and sent him flying backward into a pile of gold coins. As the soldier sat up, dusting himself off, Shayla's anger had given way to frustration and despair. "So, have we calmed down?" he asked, his voice tinged with mockery. Shayla's face contorted with rage, but she managed to keep her voice steady. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Who in the nine hells are you?" The soldier laughed, a cold, bitter sound. No one of consequence, he said, his tone dismissive. Just a man who had nothing better to do today than free a Ginny from her prison. Though I must admit, I didn't quite expect this outcome. Sheila glared at him, her eyes burning with fury. You dare mock me, she hissed. I am Sheila, the immortal queen of the dunes. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, kingdoms crumble, and empires burn. And you are nothing but a mere mortal, a speck of dust in the grand tapestry of existence. The soldier's smile faded, his eyes growing cold and hard. And yet, here we are, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You're no longer the all-powerful Jenny you once were. You're just a woman now, no different from any other mortal. So, why don't you climb off your high horse and start dealing with reality? Sheila's anger boiled over, and she unleashed another torrent of sand at the soldier. He dodged it, his movements quick and fluid. Stop that, he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. Enough with the magic tricks. It's time to face the truth, Sheila. You're no longer a prisoner, but you're not free either. You're stuck here, just like me. Sheila's eyes filled with tears, her anger giving way to a crushing sense of defeat. I don't know how to live like this, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I don't know how to be mortal. The soldier's expression softened, and he took a step towards her. You'll learn, he said gently. I'll help you, if you'll let me. We can figure this out together. Sheila looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. Why would you do that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The soldier shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Because I've got nothing better to do, he said simply. And because, for some reason, I think you might be worth the trouble. A new partnership. Sheila stared at the soldier, her golden eyes searching his face for any sign of deceit. But all she saw was a tired, battered man who, despite everything, offered her a chance at something new. She sighed, the weight of her newfound mortality pressing heavily on her shoulders. All right, she said, her voice steadier now. Let's figure this out together. The soldier nodded, his expression serious. First things first, he said, glancing around the chamber. We need to get out of this temple. It's not exactly the safest place to be. Sheila looked around, taking in the crumbling walls and ancient treasures strewn about. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen the outside world. Lead the way, she said, gesturing for the soldier to go ahead. The soldier walked toward the nearest exit, Sheila following closely behind. As they navigated the maze-like corridors of the temple, Sheila couldn't help but marvel at how different everything seemed now. The walls, once just an abstract part of her prison, now felt tangible and imposing. The air, heavy with the scent of age and decay, filled her lungs in a way she had never experienced before. What's your name, by the way? Sheila asked, breaking the silence. The soldier glanced back at her, a faint smile on his lips. Marcus, he said, Marcus Kane. Marcus, Sheila repeated, testing the name on her tongue. Thank you, Marcus, for freeing me, even if it didn't go as planned. Marcus shrugged. We'll make it work, he said simply. We always do. They finally emerged from the temple, stepping into the harsh light of the desert sun. Sheila squinted, her eyes adjusting to the brightness. The vast expanse of sand stretched out before them, the heat shimmering in the distance. Sheila took a deep breath, the hot, dry air filling her lungs. For the first time in centuries, she felt truly alive. Marcus shaded his eyes with his hand, scanning the horizon. There's a town not too far from here, he said. We can get supplies and figure out our next move. Sheila nodded, feeling a sense of determination rising within her. She was no longer the immortal queen of the dunes, but she still had her wits and her will. Lead the way, she said. As they walked, Sheila found herself reflecting on her past. She had been so focused on her power and her domain that she had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Now, stripped of her immortality, she felt a strange sense of freedom. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Marcus, sensing her introspection, remained silent, allowing her the space to process her thoughts. They walked in companionable silence, the desert stretching out endlessly before them. Adjusting to mortal life. The town Marcus had mentioned came into view just as the sun began to set. It was a small, dusty place, but it bustled with life. Shayla could hear the sounds of people talking and laughing, the clinking of glasses, and the distant strains of music. It was all so overwhelming, yet invigorating. Marcus led Shayla to a modest inn on the edge of town. "We'll rest here for the night," he said, pushing open the door. The innkeeper, a grizzled old man with a friendly smile, greeted them warmly. "2 rooms, please," Marcus said, sliding a few coins across the counter. The innkeeper handed them 2 keys. "Enjoy your stay," he said, his eyes lingering on Shayla for a moment longer than necessary. Shayla met his gaze, her golden eyes flashing, and the innkeeper quickly looked away. In her room, Shayla sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. Everything was so new, so different. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She had spent centuries yearning for freedom, and now that she had it, she wasn't sure what to do next. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Marcus standing there, a small, uncertain smile on his face. "I thought you might want some company," he said. Shayla stepped aside, allowing him to enter. They sat together in silence for a while, the weight of their situation settling around them. "You know," Marcus said finally, "you're handling this a lot better than I expected." Shayla laughed, the sound surprising even her. "I'm not sure what I expected," she admitted, "but I'm determined to make the most of it." Marcus nodded, a look of admiration in his eyes. "I have no doubt you will," he said. "You've already proven you're stronger than most." Shayla felt a warmth spread through her at his words. For the first time since gaining her freedom, she felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't alone in this. She had Marcus, and together, they would navigate this new world. A new path. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Shayla and Marcus explored the town, gathering supplies and learning more about the world around them. Shayla found herself fascinated by the simple pleasures of mortal life, the taste of food, the feel of the sun on her skin, the sound of laughter. Everything was a new adventure, and she relished every moment. Marcus proved to be a steadfast companion, guiding Shayla with patience and understanding. He taught her how to navigate the complexities of mortal life, from bartering for goods to understanding social customs. Shayla, in turn, shared her vast knowledge and wisdom, her centuries of experience providing valuable insights. As they spent more time together, a deep bond formed between them. Shayla found herself opening up to Marcus in ways she had never thought possible. She shared her fears and hopes, her dreams and regrets. Marcus listened with an open heart, offering support and encouragement. One evening, as they sat by a campfire under the starlit sky, Shayla turned to Marcus, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," she said softly. "Someone who understands, who cares." Marcus smiled, his eyes warm and kind. "We're in this together, Shayla," he said. "Whatever the future holds, we'll face it side by side." Shayla felt a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in centuries, she felt truly free, not just from her prison, but from the burdens of her past. She had found a new purpose, a new path, and a new friend. As they continued their journey, Shayla and Marcus faced many challenges, but they faced them together. And with each obstacle they overcame, their bond grew stronger. Shayla no longer saw herself as the immortal queen of the dunes, but as a mortal woman, learning to live and love in a world full of possibilities. And so, under the vast expanse of the desert sky, Shayla and Marcus walked side by side, ready to face whatever the future held. Together, they forged a new destiny, one filled with hope, adventure, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.